Okay. All right. So we had a little break there, back at it. But yeah, we were talking about how you guys have a very, very specialized custom one-on-one fitting. And you got the bar, you got the drinks, you got the personalized service. And that seems to be what a lot of golfers, especially who are diehards, really gravitate towards.
Yeah, and they're almost like making a pilgrimage to come out, right? They'll come out and, we'll try to get them on our country club to let them play golf a little bit and, meet them out for a drink if they come from out of town. And like, you just try to make it like and it's fun for us to host it, right? Like we love doing it. And, we love our town where we live in and, it's kind of cool to show off, Sycamore a little bit. And yeah, you just try to make it like a really cool special thing. And also too, like they're going to get a lesson too, basically, between Kevin and Neil. So very rare, they're going to also say, hey, let's work on this and fit you, right? They can't help it. They're teaching professionals and fitters. So you're going to get a little better golf swing by the time you leave, some concepts to work on. And like I said, we don't charge for it. So we just try to make sure, once again, from a service standpoint, that they're getting something that you can't get that anywhere else. I mean, you can get that in other places, but hopefully the way the facility looks, the vibe of it, it's like a very cool one-off experience.
How nervous or even is it a problem anymore? I remember Golf Digest years ago did a very big story on it, but patent infringement and I guess, like intellectual property, I guess what most people be aware of in today's world. But with you doing most of your manufacturing or everybody doing their manufacturing overseas, how much of an issue or does it keep you up at night that you worry about that you work on a design and it takes you a while to get it and you finally got it where you want to and they're making it in these plants and someone takes that idea or that design down the street and then next thing you know, a very identical model is showing up on eBay or on some goofy website
it's never happened because of I trust the partners that I work with. This is why we work with premium guys who are doing work for the biggest companies as well that out there because of the quality. So we don't shop it to save $1. I've got my guys who do forgings. I got my guys who do titanium drivers. I got my crew that does fairway woods and hybrids. And I stick with those guys because it doesn't leak out, and that doesn't happen. Just like, they shouldn't share their information from me on the other manufacturers, right? They don't ever tell me anything what's going on, nor should they, nor would I ever ask, right? So you just have to make sure that your partners that you're dealing with overseas are truly your partner, and that stuff doesn't happen.
Yeah, because that became quite a problem in the knockoff industry, didn't it, for a while?
Yeah.
12, 15 years ago.
I mean, somebody could reverse engineer what we're doing. Like I don't go and patent it, but like, do I worry about the factory, selling me out down the street no, because I think they're really good at what they do. They're professional. We have a great relationship. We're growing like crazy. It'd be suicidal on their part to throw me under the bus for one sale for, somebody else to copy what we do. So no, I don't really, could it happen? Yes. Has it ever happened? Not that I know of. So I don't really sit and worry about it. We have great partners overseas that, we have great relationships. I don't shop it. They're my guys. We work as a team together over there. So it's very, very strong. They're a part of Sub70. I couldn't do this without their help. So they're part of the team. It's not adversarial. Like they're the guys who help with our, who do our forging irons, right? Like they're a part of the team from design to help with manufacturing to concepts. Like they need us and we need them. It's not adversarial at all. We're like all completely trying to make this because the more we sell, the better they do.
When I was doing fitting and then we take somebody, we were doing a lot with shafts and we had a system that dialed in shafts. The guy I worked for to this day, and he's more or less retired now. To this day, no one had been able to figure out how he did that. He was able to determine what horsepower you produced to really dial in the CPM on a club. I mean, it was like spot on. And then he obviously knew through 40 years or 50 years of doing it, the profile and everything else that was needed. But we used to sit there in his trailer at night when he would do most of the work. Of course, I would help out because he had a system that he used that was very efficient in all the times that he'd been doing it. But he used to tell me, and this might be antiquated now, but because we used to take apart these clubs and then as we reshafted them, all the heads were measured for weight and everything else. And there were certain manufacturers that the weight of the heads in a set would be all over the map. I mean, wasn't even close. And he would show me this stuff and he would tell me that if the manufacturers in particular, if they would spend, I think back then it was like 3 cents a head more on their manufacturing process, that the quality control would skyrocket by over 50%, that it wouldn't even be an issue anymore. But for some reason, I'm sure they listened to accounting or somebody that said, no, don't spend that because it's going to cost X amount. But with all the advancements in technology and in manufacturing being one, is that even an issue anymore? Or are there some people out there?
There's still a little bit of variance by design, but it's not like I was in the golf business in the 90s. Oh man, you had some bad runs of stuff. Oh, it's 1,000 times. So I say, like, you used to remember back in the day, you could have a golf club company pick one that had a really good product, then the next series was just awful. That does not happen anymore. Every major golf club company produces really good clubs. It's almost impossible for the consumer to go wrong anymore. You know, everyone makes great equipment. So the quality of the equipment, the tolerances, all of it are way better than they were 15, 20 years ago. It's not even close. Not even close. And yes, you also pay. This is why we don't argue over $1 or 50 cents. We pay to have the quality, you know, tolerances tighter and where it needs to be. You know, it makes it easier on our lives to do it that way too, right? So, yeah, we're like, you know, on weight plus or minus a couple grams, you know, but also too, we'll hand pick. If somebody wants a certain weight, we can go find the heads and pick it. If somebody wants a lighter swing weight, heavier swing weight, you know, it also helps to have a little bit of variance in there so we can go hand pick some stuff. But like anymore, the tolerances of the manufacturing is way better than it was, you know, when I started Diamond Tour Golf in 95. Way better.
Yes.
It's not even close to how much. Every club is more consistent of how it's supposed to be manufactured. 1,000%. It was ugly back then.
It was. I mean, there some clubs would come in, you know, 15 grams difference than the other one. It was, this is crazy.
Right. Yeah.
And especially when you're trying to dial in somebody's shafts in particular, and you're doing, and you got one 6-iron that weighs X and the 7-iron that weighs Y.
It's impossible. You can't match it up then.
You can't do it. I mean,
you can't do it.
It's like, which one do you, you're going to have to hedge one way or the other. And which way do you go? And that was just, I mean, even at 40 years of doing it, I'd sit there and watch him just be frustrated out of his mind sometimes.
Yeah, because you couldn't make it perfect, you know. And yes, and this is like across the whole board for golf. You know, the products are so much better than they ever used to be from the premium factories that build the stuff, right? It's not even close of how much better the stuff is. Because you remember, like, how hard it was for touring pros to switch equipment back in the day. Yep. And now you can get it so precise, like for John Rahm to go from TaylorMade to Callaway. Once he gets the golf ball down, no problem. The equipment's so consistent and good, they can get exactly the way he wants it. Remember, boy, in the early 90s, if somebody switched oh my God, you know, it took them a season to figure it all out, and they couldn't quite get it right. And those days.
Well, yeah. One of the big ones that everyone remembers was Payne Stewart when he went to Spalding.
Yep, from Wilson.
Yes,
you know,
and I think didn't Tom Lachon do his irons? And I mean, they went painstaking process,
and they still couldn't get it quite right. Yeah, you're right. You know, and it's just the inconsistency. And I also think, if I remember correctly, back then they wanted him to play a little bit more of a game improvement club that they were pushing versus what he normally did, and they couldn't get it quite right. You got to remember, back then the golf balls weren't as consistent, so you get one ball, you go to the range, and the next ball is, you know, they're not like they are now. There was just so many more variables back then to doing it, you know, and now it's every major manufacturer makes a great golf ball, makes a great golf club. Like I said, it's better for the consumer. It's really hard to go wrong anymore.
Well, I think maybe Clear's doing a little bit better job in the golf ball market. Our buddy
Gary. Golf ball. Yeah, Gary's awesome. Like, good friends with him. Quality of their product is really, really good. Really, really good.
I told him I'd give him feedback. He sent me a couple to try, and I told him I give him. And they've been sitting on my ottoman for about 3 months, and I got to send him a message. I said, Gary, I'm not. It's not that I haven't done it. I just haven't played. I played 2 or 3 times. I'm afraid to take his ball out because I don't want to make one swing and lose his ball.
It's really good. You know, like, I love his stuff. You know, and what Dean's doing at Snell's amazing for the price point. You know, Dean's just done such a great job of, you know, doing his ball direct to consumer. There's some really cool alternatives out there from the major companies that you think of. There's some cool boutique companies doing some really innovative things. You know, I love what Gary's doing. I love what Dean's doing. You know, I like their vibe. And I like their innovations of where they're going. And it's like us. They're a little more boutiquey, more nichey. You know, they're not following the thing a little outside the box. It's really
How
good stuff.
does how does the recent, well, as recent as yesterday, the change that the ruling bodies look to implement in a few years, how is that going to impact you guys as far as
Well, we
designing?
don't make a golf ball, so it's not going to have anything to do with us,
Well,
So
wouldn't it not? Wouldn't it change in that if the golf ball that the elite players are going to play from amateur level to pro? Because if they're changing the design of a golf ball, and I would have to imagine that you guys, until you find out through talking to Dean and Gary and the big players in that industry in the golf ball, determining how the ball is going to change and then how you're going to have to match up the club design to optimize
we would
game.
have to, yeah, what we would then do is, we haven't gotten there yet, but you would need prototypes of the ball. Then you'd have to give it to a tour player with our current clubs and what's the numbers look like. And then you'd have to go back to the board. And what you might end up doing is hand making those guys irons. Because you got to remember, it's only going to be for the elite player, right? For me and you, it's not going to matter. So if Tommy Armour III needed his irons tweaked because of that ball, I don't know if they're going to put it on the Champions Tour or not, or Zach on the Corn Ferry Tour, yeah, we may have to go back. And then what you would do is the factory will hand build sets for touring pros. So if we need to move center of gravities, if we need to do stuff, we can modify it just for them. But then it'd be like back to like the old Tom Wishon working with Payne Stewart, you'd be on a one-off basis because the ball changed. From that aspect, 100% we could be affected, but just for the touring pros. The question is, where does this end? Is it D1 college golfers playing it? Is the Champions Tour guys play it? Or do they want the ball to go further for the Champions Tour guys to make, birdies? And my gut would be, I don't know if anyone wants to see Jerry Kelly hit the ball shorter. Not that Jerry Kelly's short, but, Champions Tours, it's entertainment. Do you guys want many birdies, right? So where is this line? And then you're exactly right. The ball manufacturers are going to have to tweak this for the players. And for us, if they're going to play the ball they're going to play, I could completely see us having to change some wedge designs around, irons around. I don't know about the driver because you're still trying to make that jump and go as far as you can. But, yeah, I think there'll be some going back to a drawing board once they get the ball out there and looking at the data. And my guess is you'll probably have to, maybe hand build some sets for guys.
As you look at the life cycle of this, and it's hard to project forward because it doesn't even take effect until 2026. But if you look at the backwards at the progression of manufacturers in the golf industry, and then the ruling bodies, technology and the manufacturers have always been ahead of the ruling bodies. It's like the ruling bodies react to what's being done. So looking forward, I would have to imagine that no matter what they implement, that the research and the scientists and engineers are going to come up with new ways to get even those balls to go longer and further in a very similar way that lofts have become stronger, but moving weight down to the bottom of the club, it gets the ball up. So you're hitting it higher and
well,
longer.
But they could actually stifle them enough where they want that ball to go 10% less, where there's no way around it. Maybe they get 1%, it goes 9%, but they can kind of work, but they're trying to bring this thing really back, like pretty substantially. So we'll see how tough the rules are of what they can come up with, right? Or my guess would be if they came up with a way of making that ball around the rule, they'll switch the rule because the whole goal is they want to be able to, keep playing U.S. Opens at Marion. So it doesn't get, so they can do it. Or Pebble Beach gets too short or you can't use the old course anymore. So I imagine on this one, the rules are going to be pretty toughly, and, if they're going to do this, then they're going to have to do it. And if somebody comes up with a magic wand to come around it, they're going to have to kill that magic wand so the damn thing goes 10% less. That's the whole idea. You're going to run out of these classic courses. So you can't if that's what they're trying to do, I'm not saying it's the right move. I'm just saying I'm straw man in their position. Then you would have to kill that rule pretty quick so it doesn't happen. They want drives to go 290, not 320.
I think that it's good that something's being done to rein it in. I just think that, as they always have been, that the ruling bodies, because they don't answer to anybody, they basically do it the hell they want to, that they're very late to the game. I mean, if they would have come in years ago and said, hey, here, like they did with the driver, you can go up to this point with the ball, but beyond that, I mean, we've got to protect some sort of integrity on the history of the game, is because it is tied into history, probably more so than any other sport. I just think that going backwards, and I've been sitting here for 2 days reading all the social media stuff from Brandel, Chambly to Jim McLean, and then all the responses. I mean, you've got a definite split in the industry, and not that we needed another one.
Well, the manufacturers of the ball manufacturers are going to have a shit fit over this because now they got to go make a ball that no one's going to buy, and then all of a sudden the guys that are playing it doesn't correlate with the ball they're selling. So you're going to get massive push. I'd be pissed if I was Strixon trying to sell a bunch of golf balls, right? Because now all of a sudden the ball you see on TV, you're not playing that same ball. How much money and R&D do they have to put in this thing for, 1/10 of 1% of the players in the world?
That are all getting them for free anyway.
Yeah, right. So it's just it's a shit show from that standpoint, from a budget standpoint. What do we get out of this thing? I wonder at some point, I was against when they, the belly putters. I never understood. I would just let people putt with it. Eventually, does the PGA Tour just go, you know what? We're just going to make our own rules. You want to follow this USGA thing, go ahead. But we're just, here's where we're at. We're just going to manage this ourselves. We're not relying on this anymore. I wonder, if that's coming because it's going to affect their players, if they can't get a golf ball that they can sell to the general.
There we go.
There. Yeah,
That's okay.
The phone rang. What do you do in that situation with the golf ball? So, I was saying before, like, if all of a sudden you got Brooks Koepka playing a Strixon golf ball, but everyone knows a different Strixon golf ball, is it worth putting that on the bag on the PGA Tour, knowing it's it's made equipment just for them that goes shorter, right? So that could affect the guys' livelihoods on the PGA Tour as well. So does eventually does the PGA Tour or Live Golf just say we're just doing our own rules? Whatever it is, we're just going to make local rules at the time of the tournament. And I don't think the square groove rule has that really worked in the long run. Does banning, throwing Keegan Bradley off for 10 years and making a living because he used a belly putter? And I still would argue the best guys in the world were never belly putter guys. They weren't Cam Smith with a putter. And then the stupid rule is you got a 65-year-old guy who shakes like crazy as it is on the country club, and he's a 12 handicap. And now all of a sudden he's screwed because he can't make a 6-footer and he's pissed off. Like, what was the point?
Yeah. I'm 100%. I did a 10 years deep dive study into neuroscience on putting. And then when that came out, I mean, we were at the Carolinas year-end pro at Pinehurst, and there's 12 of us in a house, and there was a big discussion. And of course, you had the very, very old school guys who wanted traditional, this isn't right. And I said, okay, tell me why it's right. If it's all about, and I was talking about skill development back then. I said, if it's about skill development, and today, you've got the skill of swinging faster. That's obviously Bryson proved that that's something you can definitely focus on and improve. But if skill development in putting is being able to control the distance, being able to read a green, aligning the face, get a start on line you want to, tell me how anchoring it gives anyone a competitive advantage. Because as you mentioned, I think the guy that went to NC State, he was from the Netherlands.
Yeah, Carl Peterson was done. I mean, basically, once he couldn't do it, right? Once they wouldn't let him anchor the long one, Tim Clark gave it up.
Yep, I think Carl was the only one in the top 20. In like, if you look back over decades since the anchoring had come into play, he was the only one that had anchored that was in the top 20 in putting.
Yeah, he might have been, like I said, it's not like these guys are just, Adam Scott wasn't great with the long wand. He was just acceptable.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the powers that be just said they didn't like the aesthetics and they're going to change it. And again, to another one of your points is that you got all the major tours around the world. You've got the manufacturers, the golf ball manufacturers, and then you got the club companies who are going to, also be involved in that because they're going to have to maybe tweak some things for the players. It's like you have everybody going to be against you. At what point do they just say, we're going to create our own rule for this segment?
When's the DP World Tour just say, or the PGA Tour, like, we're just not doing this? It's because once all of a sudden the PGA Tour starts hearing, hey, from these partners, which advertise on their, part of the TV contract, why they get so much money for this is there's a lot of golf club manufacturers on those TV commercials. When they start throwing their weight around of supporting the tour. And this is what it's going to do to us. And, when do they eventually just, essentially roundabout way make the USGA irrelevant? They're just not going to do this. And yes, during the week when there's the US Open, just like back in the day when Hogan had to go play the different ball over the British Open, right? They had the small ball. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to maybe play the Augusta ball that week or the US Open ball that week. But the rest of the time, you the PGA Tour is just going to say, or Live Golf is just going to say, here's our rules. We're not following this anymore. It's bad for our business.
I think it's terrible for the industry, and those two organizations are looked at as leaders on protecting the game and improving the game for all and everything else. And as someone who is illustrating, and someone could say it based off the culture of your business or the success of your business, that the people who work for you all enjoy it, and the culture you've created, and that you're providing a leadership role. And you look at the USGA and RNA, it's like, well, what leadership are they providing if all they're doing is pissing off the entire golf world?
Yeah, I think they've kind of lost that, from, goofy U.S. Open golf course conditions. That was a joke. And, the whole Mike Davis run wasn't good. And then the stupid rules of the grooves and the wedge and, length of the driver. Well, it's also harder to square up a 47.5-inch driver. So who cares? Like, it takes skill. If you can do it, you can do it. Like, I don't understand. Then they also fail to seem to realize that compared to 25 years ago, the guys are 6'4" and work out a lot harder and speed train and all the rest of it. I mean, the athletes are better in every sport. Now, I understand the flipping around, like I said, you don't want these courses to get, obsolete, but, I think people like seeing 320-yard bombs and people like seeing birdies. Like, if you're going out to the John Deere Classic, like as our local event, no one's bitching they're shooting 21 under par. It's actually pretty awesome because, like, we've all played that golf course, and you're like, holy shit, he just hit that thing right. I hit it to there, and he hit it to there, and that's just fucking awesome, right? Like, I can't imagine how I want to see that, right? I want to see somebody just, shoot 67 every day from the tips, and you just appreciate how good they are. It doesn't bother me in my home event that they go really, crazy low out there. I like seeing birdies out there.
No,
so
I don't know if people watch.
That's why they watch.
People
right?
watch. Yeah, they watch professional sports to see people who can do things that they can't, and they can't even fathom things that can be done. Now you're going to try to rein them in to make it appear that they're the best in the world or doing something or hitting it as far as you are. It's just no. That's not how. It's not how you make something very good, and people want to go attend or watch.
Yeah, like I said, unless it's maybe eventually there's a thing where there's major there's major balls, and it's like the old British Open where you have you get 3 balls to pick from. Titleist is our sponsor on the Augusta ball. There's a low spin, a mid spin, and a high spin ball. You got to play one of the 3, kind of like tires in Formula One. And Augusta that week, they got to get used to it. But does the PGA Tour really need this for the John Deere Classic? So I can't watch a guy hit at 320 versus 285. Oh,
I haven't read. Yeah, I haven't read the details of it yet. I think they said they're going to try it at certain events. It might eventually evolve into where it's at the majors. So that how much more land can Augusta National buy from Augusta Country Club to lengthen the 13th hole? As you said, St. Andrews. How much longer can you knock the 17th?
Yeah, so if that's your concern, because it's not the John Deere Classic that anyone cares about. So does I don't know if this is the right answer. I haven't really thought it completely through, but is it a major ball then if that's where their concern is, right? Because no one cares at the Texas Open how low they go.
No, shoot 10 under a day. People are going to tune into that.
Well, it's awesome, right? Because I want to see greatness. Like I've been fortunate enough to play with tour players. Like I know how much better they are than a really good amateur player. But when you go out, let's see, if you don't ever get to tour, play with a tour pro. But you go out to the John Deere and you watch it up close and you see a guy shoot a 64 on a 7,200-yard golf course with the rough up and the greens fast, and you've played out there before. Then you go, holy shit. I just watched this guy for 18 holes do something I can't wrap my head around of being that good at it. I'm still a fan of golf. Like, I'll go out there and watch it, and I'm still like, that's just so badass. Like, to carry that bunker and to hit it that hard, and then to wedge it that close and to make the 6-footer when they need. Like, it's still fun to watch elite be elite, my opinion.
Yeah, and usually nowadays they hit it over that tree, because the tour players can hit it so high compared to the average golfer.
Yeah,
they hit over that tree and they carry that bunker, and it's like, no, I can't even. Most golfers I can't even fathom that and just look at it and they're in awe. Yeah. And now you want to take it away. It doesn't make any sense.
I like being in awe of it. and just, giving the golf clap and watch a great player play around the golf and you go, that's just so cool. Like, it's just so cool to see that level of excellence. I don't want
if I can jump back for a minute to the driver design, because that's like the thing that everybody's into. As we're speaking at distance, and people are looking for distance, and all they're wanting is the face to hit it longer. But there's a lot more in driver design. There's obviously shape, and now we're getting in aerodynamics and materials, playability, functionality, and still keeping the consumer happy. We talked a fair amount about irons, but the sound. The sound is obviously to a lot of golfers is a very big one. Can you describe how that process works a little bit to a lot of people that might not know?
Well, you just sort of, that we're working on a current driver for next year now. It's not done, but you just sort of say, okay, we have a firm helping us with this. Mm-hmm. What materials are out there? How much more carbon fiber can we use? Because if we can use more carbon, we have more weight we can put in the right areas. You can't make the center of the face any hotter. That's already as hot as you can make it, right? That probably peaked. If you hit it dead nuts in the middle 10 years ago, with the CT of where it needs to be at. But we can expand the face. Now the big thing is, how do you make the rest of the face hit more like the center of the face, where you don't lose that much CT or jump or face deflection, right? Like you're trying to get that maximum jump off that face more over the whole face. So if you miss hit, it acts more like a center hit. We can still improve on that, right? And you're still working with different test designs on that part. More carbon fiber, more aerodynamics, more adjustable weights. The more we can lighten the overall chassis, stiffen the chassis up a little bit so that the face is a little bit more effective, and the more weight we can play with then to put in the heel, the toe, in the rear, we can then use that to be more adjustable for each player, to have that ability to move the weights around, to kind of get it dialed into where they want it. So it's a little tweak here, it's a little tweak there. You're still dealing with the USGA rules of size and how much CT it can have. But like you said, you're to the point where if we can get ball speed, obviously, as you well know on this, the faster you swing, the more you can get out of the new drive. Swing at 120, you can get the face to compress more. So unfortunately, it helps the elite players get more out of the nuance of the technology. But let's say you take my golf swing, and I'm at 101, 102, 103. If I can get consistently 1.5 miles ball speed, 3 or 4 yards, that's a net win in the drivers these days, because our last driver was so pushed to the limit. So you're just trying to pull a little of this and a little of that and a little of this and a little of that. And that's why we kind of run them like every 3 years and see, can we just make it a little bit better? But there is no 10-yard magic bullet, unless the driver is, you're playing the wrong ball with the wrong shaft or the wrong loft. Yeah, you can get 30 yards if your current driver is just fit terrible. But there is no magic 10 yards anymore. Assuming the ball's right for you, the length's right, the shaft's right, you're in the right head design, stuff like that. And the other thing we're still doing is you still design our pro driver to hit the hard fade. So then now we start nuancing the drivers to fit the kind of golf that players are playing. We'll probably in the new one do a pro, a standard, and some sort of a max. Right? Then you can sort of use that technology and say, well, what kind of golfer are we going for? And make that more applicable, for the pro, for the guy to hit that little hard fade, right? Make it really hard to hook. Make it a little bit smaller, so it just looks more traditional. So then you can kind of nuance, once you figure out how that we're going to use the technology, then you spin it down to the 3 different levels of the kind of player you're going after. The max, you'd make it wider, MOI up, spin rate a little bit higher on, so it gets up in the air a little bit more. But there is no 10-yard magic bullet. If you take a driver from 2 years ago, and you assuming it all fits, it's 2-3 yards.
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to gain every time you do one. 2 yards, 3 yards. That's and if you're swinging at 82 miles an hour, it might be a yard, right? Because you can't make the face flex as much. So the new tech we'll put in the face, and if you can't make enough speed to make the face flex, you're not. That's how DJ gets more out of it, or Rory, than I do.
It is Carpenter steel used to be the premier material, if I remember correctly. Does that sound about right? As far as
fairway woods and hybrids and like hollow body iron still is, it works really good because you can make it really thin. Not for drivers, but for fairways and hybrids.
Was it for drivers at one point, not a number of years ago?
Before like miraging steel, and it wasn't carpenter steel, but yeah, before titanium came out, there was a harder, thinner steel.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously the composites have taken the lead on material for driver heads.
Yeah, because you get just lighter, so then you can use the weight in more optimal places.
It's just easier to move around.
It's easier to move around, or more of it to move around, right? So if we can give somebody 20 grams of adjustable weights in it, now all of a sudden that player can really dial it in versus 10, right? So if you can make the whole driver lighter, then use the weights more in each corner, it's a better way of dialing it in. So you're trying to optimize the weight out.
As Rory took his gamer, so to speak, out of play last week because he didn't want to get caught, using an illegal drive. Not that he didn't want to get caught. He didn't want to use a driver that the face didn't match.
Because over time, the face thins down from them hitting it so much they could get over the limit at their level.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, I don't know his contract, too. His contract may say you have to play the newest driver.
Yeah, which would be odd. I don't know why a guy at his level would say that you're going to play the new one regardless of if it performs.
Yeah, because Morikawa had the old one in, that fades more for him for that golf course because length's not as huge around that track. So I don't know that it was a strange statement because unless it's a contractual thing where I don't know this to be fact, but unless in his contract he has to play the newest version of whatever's out there. Because one would also assume he would have a backup for last year's driver too, if he wasn't comfortable with the new one. So I don't. There's more to that story. I'd have to know of why did he say that.
Yeah, it was very odd.
I'm missing parts of it here.
Because when I was playing, I always had two. I never went anywhere without three drivers. The one I was using, the backup, and then in case anything happened to those, I always had two sets of irons and about three putters at minimum that were the same, and then I had my ones that I
right. So if he was concerned about the CT, there should be a backup to the last year's Stealth. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Morikawa put it in. He says it's not going quite as far, but he could fade it easier. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if their contracts look different. I'm not 100%. That's the other part. They may say, hey, look, you have to, the driver, you're Rory McIlroy, we're paying you this much money. You have to have the newest driver. And I don't know the details.
And what you're seeing as far as moving weights, because the MOI seems to go up if the weight is back in the face, further away from the face.
Right.
But then the spin comes down if you move that weight up closer to the face. And that seems to be right now we're well, it has been for quite some time, but easier to do, as you mentioned. Do you see one benefiting a certain level of player, or is it just? Yeah, I mean,
this is why you probably have you change the CG and stuff. This is why we don't have one driver to fit everybody. You play around with it. If the pro will be different than the standard, and the max will be different than the standard of what you want to do with the weight, and what you want the spin rate to do, and what you want the trajectory to do, and you can do things to make it go anti-left. So you would play around with that based upon. We'll come up with we do the standard one first. Once we get that dialed in, then we make the changes to make the pro more pro. You move the weights potentially up more. You make the center of gravity, higher in a little bit so it goes a little bit more mid-trajectory. You do stuff with the bulge and roll to make it fade more easy. You kind of start off with the standard one, then you modify based on the player, and that's why we'll probably do 3 different drivers next year instead of 2.
Do you see if the MOI has moved backwards and as that tries to realign itself with the butt end of the club as it comes in impact, that the loft at dynamic and what it comes out at static seems to be different? So let's say if you have a 9.5 driver with the weights all in the back, that as that weight shifts and it kicks, so to speak, kicks the face, that it's going to kick it and add more loft. Whereas if you move the weight towards the front, that it's going to stay more. If it's 9.5, it's going to be very close to 9.5 at impact.
Yeah, it depends how much weight you put forward to it. You even make it come off lower and launch it even lower than 9.5. But yeah, you get all that weight in the back. You put a big, huge weight in the back. It plays essentially higher than the 9.5. Yes. So like I said, that's why you can't make one driver to fit all 3 segments. You got to switch. It wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, you have to switch it up because there's just too much you can kind of move the weight with and get it right, for that type of player.
Yeah, I think my brother, because my brother did a lot of fitting. I did it really before the TrackMan era, and the guy I learned from, anytime that we did clubs, TrackMan was really getting some steam back then as far as the masses, and he was using that technology to do a lot of fitting. And he would take clubs that were fit for people and put them on TrackMan, and numbers would come out spot on. He said, I don't know how you guys are doing that. I said, well, it's not really me. I'm not the brains behind this, but taking into account where those things were and then how to dial in the shaft based on the club head design and functionality of how it was designed to work, as well as how the person's swing was, how they loaded and everything else. You were able to do those things. It was simple physics.
Yeah, you could still always, back in the day, I was doing club fittings, and when I was with SMT, you'd watch the ball flight. The ball flight would still tell you what's going on. If it's spinning too low or it's spinning too high, you could still just watch the person. If you know a golf swing, you could watch the golf swing and then watch the ball flight and put one and one together and sort of figure out, well, what changes do you have to do, or what would be the appropriate, because at SMT we had like 5 different drivers at that time, sort of different niches. One would spin more, one would go left, right? And you just sort of, even without TrackMan, you could get a pretty good idea when you'd hit it, and you go, yeah, that's barreling pretty good. You could just see how it release on the ground. Like, it wasn't as precise, but if you knew what you were doing, you could still kind of dial it in just from watching the ball flight.
And I was talking about this other day to a guy that I know that's a very good fitter, and he was saying, because I don't know the TrackMan numbers as well as somebody who's doing that on a regular basis, because I really wasn't in it. You asked me the physics of it, and I could say, okay, do this, and it's going to come out in ideal launch conditions. But they were saying that the gold, not even the golden, but like the platinum would be to get 16 and 16. So 16 degrees launch and about 1600 spin, that the ball would just go maximize as long as it could.
It's pretty low spin, if you could get it to 16 or 17 at that would be like a home run ball. You'd have to hit up on that pretty good to get that lowest spin. If you can get like 16, 17 at 2000, that's pretty damn good, but that takes some real talent to hit up on it enough. Yeah, it's pretty elite to be able to do that, right? I
think Bubba was one of the ones that he was launching, I believe at one time, 14 to 16. His spin was like 1800 to 1900.
With that kind of speed, it would work. It's just a big home run ball, right?
Yes.
But you got to hit up on that thing really, 4 or 5 degrees up to get that kind of going, to get that launch with that lowest spin. And then you have to have the modern ball to do it too, back in the area before, TrackMan, or we use GC quads. I still look at it when I was fitting with my eye. You can still see it, and all it does is but the data is so good now, it still kind of reinforces what you're saying or seeing.
Yeah.
And you can, use both tools. I still look at someone's golf swing. Okay, this guy's going to be naturally steep. What do we do? Okay, but the data is the data. Like, it reinforces your eye. It's great from that standpoint because the math doesn't lie. But you could still correlate it up. Like, I'm still old school enough where I could still see it, but the data would.
You see that ball start to float at all.
You can see it still, right? But the data now that you see from a TrackMan or a GC just backs up your eye. And you can see club path, and it's a great tool to fit. It really does make it easier and better. Then the customer can see the number too. Well, why is it, going out to right field? Well, look at your path. Your face is open. It shows them, right? And so it's hard to argue with math, right? Those things are math machines.
I had Brian Gathright on, and Brian's a top 100 coach, and he ran for many years. He ran the Harvey Pennant golf schools, and and Brian's got to be in his early 60s, I believe, but he said he remembers when he was young and video was becoming very prominent back in the 80s, and he had a discussion with Harvey about it, and because it was new technology at that time, and Harvey told him, he said, look, it's good to have, and it shows us a lot more, it gives us a lot more information. He said, but this is going to be far more intriguing to the people that we teach, really, than it is to us. I mean, our job is to know the swing and to know what does what and how to get the result. But the people are going to be blown away by it. They're going to love it. They're going to love to look at it. And as you said, people, when they see their numbers, or whether it's their path, their spin, their launch, angle of attack, all those things, I think that there's a wow factor to a lot of golfers, especially as golfers who are very much into their clubs, are more techie by nature.
Right.
And they like to, the more data you give them, they think automatically it's going to make them better. Even some of them go too far; they get too data driven.
Well, you can look at the data and you can make some changes, and all of a sudden the data gets better and the ball flight gets better, and you go, okay, this is why when we do a fitting, when I was doing them, or Kevin, I'm retired from it at this point, but Kevin or Neil does it. That's why we'd always do a little bit of a lesson too, unless the guy's a real elite player. Usually you can tighten a few things up too. On top of fitting, hey, let's get this path going more here, and all of a sudden, well, shit, this is. Way better. Well, yeah, because you're 7 degrees one way or the other, right? Let's try to tighten. So you can use that data to kind of help the miss, right? Tighten up the miss, basically. Make less, the more square, the more neutral we can get, the better chance you have of hitting a good golf shot.
When you get into driver design and you're looking to maximize, in particular, the face and how much spring it has to it, to use a very generic term, how fine a line do you walk as a manufacturer or an owner of a company to where you want to get the most you can out for the people who are using your drivers, but you don't want to sacrifice the integrity? Because there's got to be a fine line to where what you don't want to have happen is people to start breaking faces, and now it's just
that's why you have all of them milled anymore, so you can get them exactly the same every time. Like you don't like when we send a driver into the USGA. You don't want that CT to be exactly to the edge because you don't want to give somebody an illegal driver. There's kind of a variance you can have that's close enough for manufacturing, and they give you a little bit of a leeway beyond it, but you don't push it to the absolute edge from a you don't have it at way below it either, but you got to give yourself a little bit of leeway. So as the face gets hit more often, it does get hotter. Right? So you got to give yourself a little bit of leeway. But the manufacturing process has gotten so much better on the faces where you mill them all now, so you can get them pretty much identical every single time.
That's amazing that you can do that even on a drive. Milling a driver just seems so crazy. I remember when
right. You can cast it and then you weld the face on, but the driver, to get it perfect, you mill it all now. So because there's going to be different variables of thickness on there, it's the best way to do it is to mill it. So when we're working with a BFT face and trying to make it hotter across the whole thing, you got to get them where it's perfect from the engineering standpoint. So you have them all milled.
With sound being so important to golfers, how do you work with a driver, given that everything's composite now, on modifying the sound? Is it something that gets injected? Is there an injectant?
Yeah, we would work with the team that we're hiring to help us with this. If it sounds too loud, or normally anymore with more carbon fiber, it can sound kind of dead. So then you have them go back and say, we got to make it sound a little bit more of a hard crack to it. So you let them kind of work their magic from the acoustics to make it sound better.
It's crazy
it's not with the carbon fiber. The problems we've had is not the last one was we got our sounds good now, like the current one we have, the 849D, which is a really good driver in the Pro, but we had to actually make it louder and sound more like a crack. Yeah, because there's so much carbon fiber, it can kind of sound. You don't want it to sound thuddy. So that instead of making it too loud, it was a little bit quiet, or it doesn't have the crack to it. So they had to go back and fix some acoustics on the inside of it. They can do some tricks to make it sound a little bit different. It doesn't hurt the playability of the club.
And not to go back to the beginning, but I mean, as far as you guys and you hire the right people, you're engineering, you've stuck with the people who are really good at what they do. And, my Golf Spy, who's very thorough in their testing of equipment. I mean, you guys got a lot of high ranks across the board on everything that you produce, which had to, when you submit something to them, do you kind of hold your breath a little bit, even though deep in your heart that you've done the right thing, you made a good product, but do you still kind of say, oh, geez, if they come out with a bad rating, I mean, that could affect us negatively? Or is it, yeah, I know we're going to like going in college when you actually studied for a test instead of just.
Yeah. I mean, I know the product. I mean, there's we won't, I mean, like, do I worry about it? No, because I know by the time we give it to my Golf Spy, we've done enough work and testing on it. We know it's a good product. Like, it's not all of a sudden going to finish like, you're not going to win it every time. Because remember, they're still testing it with human beings hitting the golf ball. Mm-hmm. Right? It's not robot tested. So you could also have a 10 handicap with a bad day that day and doesn't hit your product that well. But we're not going to ever have something that we submit that's just going to be so far down the deviation of shit performance that we're going to be like, oh my God, this thing's a dog. And then we know it's a dog. And we're going to submit them a dog. Like, we won't produce a dog. So do I think we're going to win every one of them? No. But there's, I also think, we've had some that come in mid-pack too. And that's still fine, right? We're still competing with the best out there. All I can do is control. All I can do is make the best product I can make it, and our team can make it. We can make it. And so far, the track record has worked that when we submit stuff to people for testing, it works pretty damn good. And we're getting good reviews. So as long as we just keep doing what we're doing, And this is why we're in no rush to ever bring anything out. I don't have to do it every year. I don't have to do it every 2 years. So by the time we do it, the product's usually pretty good, or there's an improvement over the old one. So I'm not under the pressure of like, I have to have a new release every year, which gives us the time to make the product good.
I could just imagine being in a meeting of your staff and engineers, and it would remind me of that scene in Apollo 13 where they're stuck up in space, and the head engineer comes in and says, "Okay, everybody, here's what we have to work with. Now come up with a way to get them home." And I can imagine you coming in and say, "Hey, everybody, here's what we have. How do we make this better?"
Yeah, and this is exactly like we have the previous model, right? There's the, like when we build our 949 hybrid, right? We had the 939. Okay, we know the performance of that. That's a really good hybrid. How do we make it better than this? What materials can we use? How do we make that performance better? So you're trying to beat the previous one. And if the previous one's pretty good and it tested well and sold well and my Golf Spy rated it well and all those accolades, if the new one performs better than that, then you're probably going to be okay. And then the thing is, we don't have to have it done. And so if it takes more time or it's not quite ready, we just wait and make sure it's good before we release it. It's the beauty of not promising people like I'm going to do something every year or 2 years.
Exactly. Does a lot of that have to deal with the timing on, let's say, material that you're working with, or advancements in ancillary industries that all contribute to the golf?
It could be anything, it's spinning too low, it's spinning too high, it doesn't sound right, it doesn't look right, the face numbers, ball speed's not great. Ball speed's great, but it performs like shit, right? I mean, there's always these, when you start prototyping, you grab a little bit of this is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is good. Okay, we got to fix the bad. Round 2, round 3, right? Until you get it where it's like, bad numbers. Okay, take it on the golf course and wow, this thing's really good. Okay, what's the numbers look like? Wow, ball speed, great. Launch angle, great. Feel, sound, great. So you just hope you have a couple wins, like maybe on the first prototype, you're halfway there. You have a concept and you got a couple winners from it. Then but there's no exact science to it. I mean, like the first prototype, the new driver we're working on, ball speed was great, spin rate was dog shit. Just bad. Okay. Ball speed's really good. Center of gravity's got to go lower, right? I mean, so you got some winners and you got some losers. And then you go fix but okay, we got a really good face. We got a really good face. Like, okay, this looks good. Okay, how do we fix this part? And you go back, and you go back, and you go back.
What? What does because you obviously see a hell of a lot more research than most people. As far as, because I remember years ago that there used to be an argument among engineers that heads getting too big was and today there's a lot of talk about aerodynamics with the in drivers, but as far as head dynamics, that more mass concentrated was the one argument was that more mass concentrated could equate to more energy transfer in a driver or in a golf club, as opposed to a larger head with more forgiveness. Is that still discussed amongst the
now you usually make, it's kind of industry standard where if you're making a standard, if you go to 460, right? I mean, and then we'll make like our pro like 445 or 450 to that point where it's a little smaller, so it's a little bit of a heavier hit.
Yes,
but you can't. If you make it 400 cc's, the face gets too small to make it spring. If it gets too small, you can't make the face jump as well as you could. So you go a little bit smaller on the pro. Because it's a heavier hit, it's a heavier hammer, and that kind of player doesn't need as much forgiveness. But otherwise, you use that size advantage to your advantage for the standard driver. We'll always make the pro just a little bit smaller.
And I remember hearing some of those arguments, and then a number of years ago, had a set of irons that were they were forged, but they were oversized, and they had took a little bit more mass and put them in the head in the forging, and actually had to add loft. And when adding, because they were cranked down a little bit, but when you added loft, the ball actually went further because the energy transfer was so tight. And then I'm sure it had to do a lot with the spin, but the launch went up, and you actually were hitting them longer than you were when the lofts were lower. It was the strangest thing. So I'd always wondered, had that in my mind, can drivers be made that way? But you answered it I mean, and now it makes total sense why they can't do the same with drivers, because I guess that sweet spot in that trampoline becomes so small. It's like you got to be so good to hit it. It's not even worth it.
Exactly. You just make like a pro, like 445, 450, just to your point. So it's a little heavier of a hit, but you still got to have that face and that size to get the face to spring even on the miss hits, right? So if you had an old 380 cc driver, you would just have the center and the rest isn't thin enough because of the size to spread it out to make it actual jump.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just go a little smaller.
Yeah, if you hit the center of a big trampoline, you're going to get pushed hell of a lot higher than hitting a very small spot on a very small trampoline.
Correct. Yep.
What do you see new? I mean, advancements in technology are happening so fast. Do you see anything that's on the periphery?
Nothing where it's like, material, like, there's just something, because like, the carbon faces, they had carbon faces out from Yonex drivers in the 80s, right? That's not really new. I'd say the newest thing that's really worked is hollow body irons, like, our 699 series, how well TaylorMade's done with their 790. That tech really works for an iron player. That's kind of the newest one that's out there that you're like, that shit goes 8 yards farther in iron. With the spring effect in an iron, we're getting it down with that. The guys up at TXG tested our 699 irons, right? The new one, the V2. You got a 146 smash factor with a 4-iron. That's damn near driver level.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yes, that's changed it, right? Like, so there, people saying, 8-10 yards. That does go 8-10 yards. Now you're also going to get to a limit here pretty quick. You can't go over 1.5. Or the face will break if you make it too thin. But that's one when those kind of came out, like, it's pretty good jumps over the last 5 years of how hot we can make that iron, how much we can make it go, and how far we can make it go. That's been a cool one to see happen, because there's not that many things in golf where it's like, you get a guy who's got a set of irons from 10 years ago, right? And they fit pretty well for him. And then he gets like our new 699 and the damn thing with the same shaft and basically the same ball. It's going 10 yards farther. That's just technology.
How do you see that playing into the overall golfer's ability to improve? Because obviously hitting it longer, there's no doubt about it. The data's out there between, I've had Lou Stagner on, and I have Scott Fawcett, and all the data guys have shown without a doubt that hitting it longer, you're going to shoot lower scores because you have shorter shots to the green. Your dispersion is going to be less. But at what point does hitting it longer start to eat away at the other end of the club spectrum? Where how do you gap your clubs? In other words,
that gets to be the tricky part on the bottom end. But most of the guys, if you're a 12 handicap, having your 6-iron, go a little bit further helps you a little bit more. So you're just taking the good with the bad. The downside could be, what do you hit from 103 yards? But most of those guys are better from 103 yards anyway than they are from 165. So if you have one shorter club, and most of the guys, if you probably look at the stats, I don't know if you asked Lou this, most people under club who are higher handicaps. So by having the ball go a little further, they kind of hit more middle of the green. So there's that. I would say that aspect, even though you could have potential gapping problems on your short end, they get more help by the ball going farther because they under club most of the time. And if they can get it to roll up to the middle of the green, they have better chances of, 6, 7, 8 irons being more effective. And you can still, learn a little 3/4 gap wedge shot from 103 yards easier than most people can hit 5 irons. That's, to me, more teachable. I can teach somebody to do a Nick Faldo, shorter little swing, rotate, take a little off that. But if your 7-iron goes 10 yards further, you're usually a little better off.
Do you see the better players, the higher, let's say the start of the college level golfer to the pros that you guys are working with, and everybody in between, the girls, the ladies, do you see them gravitating at some point to the faces that are hotter, or do you see them sticking to more?
Maybe it depends on the distance. Like, there's no tour players ever going to play that thing. They might have a utility club, but it just goes too far. They can't. Back to your point, most all of every one of our tour players or D1 college golfer is using our 659 forged series or the TA3 forged irons, just because if you give Zach Fisher a 6-iron in the 699 V2s, I mean, he's literally going to hit it 215 yards. So what's he then do? You know what I mean? So you can use it for a utility club, but you're kind of screwed. But you're talking the elite of the elite. there's some LPGA players that you could use it, right? Depends how long they are. But the elite men of the elite men will never have that in their 7 iron.
No, because they're looking for the precision.
Yeah, you got to have it go
long enough.
Right. It's just not going to happen, right? So, but a 10 handicaps game is so much different than a +7 that you have to kind of look who you're building these things for.
Exactly. I mean, Jan, we covered a lot today. I mean, did we leave anything out?
I think we got it all pretty good.
You got just a few more minutes. We'll do an emergency 9 is what I call it. Just 9 questions, like going out and playing after the 18. It's just a fun rip through 9, just at random questions about nothing in particular.
Yeah, fire away at me.
All right. The first and the last, I tell everybody, first and the last, everybody gets. The 7 in between are just varies for different people. So first one, you're playing in the Ryder Cup and you're walking up to the first hole, and they've made very popular now that everyone's got their song, so get the crowd all into it. So what would be your walk-up song to the first hole?
Gosh, that's an interesting one. Walk-up song for, let's see. I'm a huge Black Crowes fan, so what Black Crowes song would kind of, like Twice as Hard, kind of get that kind of classic rhythm going? I think I could make a good swing to that sort of, 70s sort of Rolling Stones vibe with the Crowes playing. Like, if I had that rhythm in my head, the way that song starts off, I could get that one going for a nice rhythm, I think. So I'll go with Twice as Hard. Okay,
cool. Do you love to win, or do you hate to lose more? Which one would you say that you
hate to lose more?
That was quick.
Yeah, I hate losing.
If Hollywood came to you, they had the Oscars the other night. Hollywood comes to you and says, Jason, we want to make a movie about your life, and we're going to let you pick any actor to play you. Who are you going to pick?
Oh, God. I mean, he doesn't look like me because he's way more handsome. I'll go with DiCaprio. Who doesn't want Leo playing you, right? I'll go with Leo. We're about the same age. We're close to the same age. It could, I could Walter Mitty myself into thinking I'm like DiCaprio, even though I have nothing in common with him at all. But that would work.
Hey, after the job he did in Wolf of Wall Street, I think most guys would probably say, "Yeah, I want DiCaprio."
Great as that movie. He's so good at everything too. Like, it's just like him or Pitt. Those guys don't make bad movies anymore. Like, he's such a great actor.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Somebody gave you $25,000 and a ticket anywhere you want to go. Where are you gonna fly?
$25,000 and a ticket. I have not been over to Australia to play the courses on the sand area. To go play Royal Melbourne, that whole area.
The course,
all those right on the Great Sand Barrier over there. So I think that's where I would. I've been to Scotland, been to around Europe. I have not done that one, so I think I'm taking that one and go see those clubs.
That'd be hard to argue with. I've had some friends do it. They say it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Kingston Heath and all those. It's supposed to be some of the best golf, if not the best golf in the world.
Let's see. Something that you're secretly good at that nobody knows about, or only a small few know about.
Secretly good at. Gosh, I don't know. I don't think about that very often. Like, what am I?
I mean, we just spent a couple hours talking about stuff you're expert at and just
it's like my golf is such a I think I'm like pretty good at problem solving, if that makes any sense. Like,
it makes total sense. You're a CEO of a company.
Yeah, like if somebody comes to me with I can kind of according to my friends or my wife or whatever, I can give and this is not coming from me because I just, if somebody asks, I'll just give them the answer, but I'm pretty good at being able to give me your problem, let me break it down and let me help you solve it with something that's actually useful and we can work through this. So I think I'm pretty good at problem solving, rational problem solving. This might be as bad as you think it is. Here's how I see it. I think if you do this, you're going to be fine. Or having empathy and listening to people. Explain it to me and then, okay, here's what I would think about that. I've been told, I don't like to think of myself but I've been told I'm a good problem solver.
Okay, but the way you just described it, it's no no secret or no surprise to anybody that you run your company and is doing very well. I mean, it would make total sense that if you're someone in your staff, production or engineering, someone come to you and say, "Have we got this problem? How do we fix it?" That's what your role is, or a large
That's
part of
what,
your
if
role.
it gets, exactly, it's kind of my role, right? I'm an air traffic controller, problem solver all the time. So if, somebody's got a question, I'm usually pretty good at like, explain to me what's going on. Let's come up with a reasonable solution and let's see if we can implement it. I mean, that's why I guess I'm pretty good at rational problem solving.
And it's that in today's world, it's a great thing to have, because not to get off on topic, but the schooling system when you and I were young was basically memorization,
right?
And today kids have all that shit in the palm of their hand. It's like, why do they need to remember everything? So it's really gone into problem solving, and I don't know if that's taught enough, but it's a life skill that everybody needs, regardless of what industry you're in.
Yeah, like when I was in college, like I was the one in charge of throwing the party. What time do we start it? What, how are we going to organize this? Like, how do we maximize a profit? Like, who's doing what? Like, I could always sort of like, give me the scenario, I'll make it work. And then make it work for everybody, right? Not just me. Like, how did we do this as a team so we can pay our rent from having beer parties at Oshkosh? Like, I would solve that. Like, so I don't know. I mean, I'm good at throwing house parties back in college. I don't know. I could do that pretty effectively.
Hey, it's the groundwork. Yeah, it's a progression from beer parties to running
it's all still sort of the same thing. It's problem solving and, moving on.
Fundamentally, it's all the same thing.
Exactly.
If you could sit in a golf cart and talk to anybody, who would it be?
Dead or alive?
Either one. Anyone throughout history.
Sit in a golf cart and talk to. It wouldn't be a golfer. I don't know. I think sitting on a golf course talking to JFK would be pretty good, wouldn't it? If you could have a cocktail, sitting with President Kennedy, picking his brain. I don't know. That'd be. That would be a pretty good one, right? Just to be able to like go back in time and spend some time with him.
Yep.
That'd be high on my list.
Cool. Very cool. If you would change one rule in golf, what would it be?
Well, they're starting to do it like no out of bounds anywhere, meaning it's just red staked and just drop it and move. Right? Like I would do everything you could to speed it up as fast as possible. There's like no white anywhere anymore. Just if it's over there, drop it and let's go. Yeah,
keep it going.
Keep it moving. Right? We're not going ever backwards, right? So as long as we can pace a play, if we can help with that, that would be great. Anything from that level.
God, can you remember when we were young? If you played in 4 hours, you were deemed slow. That you had a problem. You had to pick it up. And nowadays it's pushing 5.
Yeah, I hate slow golf, right? Like hit it and go. So anything we can to get it moving. So less OB stakes. Like if you can find it, hit it. And if you do have to have a hazard area, it's just red and you drop it and make the drop. Put a drop area so it's simple. Here's the drop area and move forward, right? Versus
like those big money matches. Remember Doyle Brunson and all those guys that would play golf out in Vegas for big money? There was no out of bounds.
There's no out of bounds. You use as many clubs as you wanted. You could grease your driver. They just took all the cheating out of it, so everyone cheated.
Everyone
right? But
was
simple. Right. There's no out of bounds, which I'm kind of like, if you can find it, hit it. But yeah, anything we can to make golf move faster, so that'd be a part of it. And then make drop zones very user friendly. Just for the app, not for a tour event, but I mean, at your country club, you're trying to play fast. Just get it moving. No one's shooting 62 that day anyway.
Yeah, great idea. If you weren't in the golf club business, if you weren't a CEO of a company, what would you have been?
I'm probably in sales of something. I don't know what, because I've been working in golf since 17, 18 years old, so I've never had a regular job. But I like people. So I think I would be doing something with people, where I'm talking to people or some sort of sales or something like that. I don't know what industry, because I don't really have like another huge passion, right? Like I work in golf and my favorite thing to do is to golf, and my favorite vacations to take our golf vacations. So like I work in my hobby. So it's not like, well, I have, this other huge hobby that I would, do something in. Like it's golf all the time.
Watches?
So
Would you be in watches?
yeah, I love
I know
watches. I really do. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what capacity, but that's one thing I do have an addiction. It's one of those. I mean, it's a bad rabbit hole to go down, but if you start collecting watches, and I love beautifully designed mechanical watches that catch my eye. Like I love wearing them. I love having them. There's always a couple more that I want, so it's always like a great incentive. Like, if we have a good year, I can get this one. And then, sometimes you'll buy and sell them and trade them off. But yeah, absolutely. I love a beautiful timepiece on your wrist. Like, I just love the mechanics of it and just the way it makes you feel when you put like a really great timepiece on, kind of like finishes your outfit off or whatever, right? You got to get the right watch to match up kind of what you're wearing. And you get, there's nothing better than putting like a nice watch on, looking at it and go like, that's a nice timepiece. So that's like that's my one secret, like not secret thing, but like my one thing that I'll spend some money on.
It's not surprising because as I go back to the Jobs and Apple analogy, he had a fascination with artistic creation and products, and you have your passion, or one of them we could say would be watches and how they're artistic and how they mechanically work, and that's very easily applied to the golf industry and how you.
I use watch designs all the time for inspiration for golf clubs. Like I'll if I'm stuck, I'll go look at watches of certain style of watch that I know would kind of fit the feel I want, and I'll look at study watches and then get inspiration from them. So like I use that all the time to cross, and all the watches are, using different materials of rubber and carbon fiber, and how does the look and colors go together in this right feel. I use watches all the time for inspiration.
Yeah, not surprising that you go outside the industry. It gets you out of the mold that you're in and kind of kickstarts another segment of the brain working. And
yeah,
I could see.
Yeah, I have to not look at the club. So if I'm stuck, can't look at the club. Then I have to just like look at a watch. And like, why does that work? And this is kind of at the end of it when you're trying to make the aesthetics look right. Mm-hmm. The club's been designed like, how do I get that right milling or the right look to it? Because I'll usually come in at the end and finish it. And like, how do what's think of like a brand of watch that I'm trying to kind of get this flow to or look for, and then use that as inspiration. So I use it all the time. So yeah, I love great watches.
It's interesting. You can look backwards and connect the dots and to where you are today. The things that you like throughout your life and how they got you to where you are. It's like you don't even know why. You just know what you like, and then you follow that.
The watch thing started with the tour players, right? It was when I was a kid, and you go get an autograph, right? Every guy after the round would open their golf bag and put the Rolex on, and then start signing, right? I'm like, that's just so badass. It's like, get out of the bag, and the Rolex would go on, and then they sign autographs for you. It's like, all right, one day I'm going to get a Rolex, right? Then once you get a Rolex, then you start getting into all of these different, more nuanced brands, right? That kind of like, if you become a watch guy, like you really like these things that are a little bit different, beautifully designed, but more boutique, more small, more nuanced, right? But you got to get the Rolex for your first one, right? Or a couple of those, right?
I still, the Submariner, the old stainless with the black faces, to me is still the watch that I want to get. But when it comes down to just dropping the money, I just can't. It's like, God, I got this. I got a G-Shock I found in a golf cart when I was a cart guy 30 years ago that I still have that still works. Yeah. It's like, it keeps as good a time. Because I really need to buy that Rolex.
It's not, God, I want it. They all keep great time. It's just, it's one of those deals where it's like, there's no rationale that anyone needs it. It's just one of those things where it's like, you just get a passion for it. And the good part of like a Rolex is as they hold their value quite well.
Oh, so, incredibly. They skyrocketed. So
if the shit ever hit the fan, you could always sell it and put most of your money back out of it. Right. So they kind of hold their value, right? Your balance sheet just sort of switches from cash to the watch, but if you buy good watches, and a lot of them I'll buy pre-owned, I look for or something like that. They hold their value. They don't tank. So you can kind of play around with it and not have the money completely be gone and shot. Right. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
it's an asset.
It's an asset. Yeah. If you buy them right, it's an asset, and as they keep going up in price, if you buy it new and a couple years later, the new one goes up and the used ones still kind of go up in value. So, it's not a great investment, but it's, there's worse, it's better than buying a boat or something like that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's a money pit.
Exactly. So I got to watch. I like good watches. So.
Cool. Very cool thing. And then the last one, this one everyone gets as well. In your opinion, as far as golfers, who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time?
I think Tiger played the best golf that was ever played. You know, when he was on, no one ever played better than that 2000 series or 2000 year, that run he was on, right? We had all four of them between 2000 and 2001. Yep. But if you look at the longevity, and the whole game is measured in major championships, you'd have to give it to Nicklaus just based on the record. That's why everyone remembers it. So I think Tiger played the best, but due to injuries, personal stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Jack's career just lasted longer. So I'd still just give the nod to Jack from the record is the record, right? Yeah, it's 18.
I agree.
But I think Tiger played the best at that period. I don't think anyone ever dominated or played better than he was in that prime where he had all four of them.
I agree wholeheartedly. And Tiger, it was about 50-50. And usually is based off of generation. I think in the recent times, probably in the last year, Tiger's taken the lead in that question. But I always find it interesting to hear some people's answers. But I agree with you. Tiger played the best golf. Jack's career, as far as in golf, is a longevity.
Longevity, man. You're talking winning majors in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like, that's impressive. To be that level of excellence for that long, to get 18 of them. I mean, it's so damn hard to win one. 18. It's
against different eras of competition. I mean, he won against Hogan in his early career, and Palmer, and then he segued through the Watson era, and then into the Sevy and the Falcos, and it just
Trevino's and Weiskopf's, and he still played against some great players, right? Your Tony Jacklins. I mean, there was a lot of great ones. Nicklaus still competing against Sevy at that period of time, and a young fella, like, he didn't have pushovers. Ray Floyd, right? I mean, killer, right? I mean, these guys were really, really good.
Yeah. Well, anything you want to add? I mean, like I said, I think we talked about a lot of stuff today. And,
no, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I like getting down in the weeds of all this stuff. So, no, it was great. I enjoyed being on. And, if you ever want to do this again, just let me know. I love doing this media stuff. It's fun for me as well. So glad to be able to do it with you today.
I will have the obviously in the summary all the links, anything. But is there anything coming up, or you got anything coming out? Talking anywhere, doing promos anywhere that you want to tell anybody about?
No. I would just. I mean, the only thing I would just it's been an honor to be able to work with Lee McCoy, former tour player, to coming on as kind of like our teaching professional online, where you send your swing and over to Lee, and he can help on the psych, the psych side of stuff, of mindset for the game of golf. He's right now an assistant coach at the University of Georgia, but he's a former Walker Cup player, Palmer Cup, PGA Tour, won on the Canadian Tour. Like, he's seen it all, and injuries has forced his career short because he was one of the best amateur players in the world, and he played professionally at a really high level. I think he can add a lot. I'm so excited to have him on board, because I think he has so much experience, and he really does know the golf swing, and he's coaching at the college level now as an assistant at Georgia, and he has a passion for making people better. And he's had such a well-rounded thing in golf of what he's accomplished. That not only can he help on the technical side, he can help up here too. He knows what it's like to hit a shot on Sunday when it counts, and he's seen it all. So, we're really excited to have Lee on board, and I think he'll be able to help a lot of our golfers, who are Sub70 customers, want to actually play and get a little bit better as well. So,
and is he linked through your site and your social media? Because I'll have all that in.
Yeah, you need to let me know. Yeah, he's linked up with us, and you can hit him up as well. But yeah, it's an honor. Gotten to be friends with him. It's an honor to have him on board. Like, he's going to add a lot to that teaching aspect. He's really good at the technical side, and he's really good at the mental side.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. If you hang out for just a minute after we sign off, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and enjoyed having you on talking more about Sub70.
Yeah, appreciate it. All good.